Good morning, everybody. Mr. Sharad Jayapuriya, Mr. Srivat Jayapuriya, Dr. Thakur, fellow panelists, Mr. Prahlad Kakkar, one greatly admires, Sonia Sani, faculty members, delegates, guests, particularly Professor Rajpal who was coordinating with me, students above all, and especially Akanksha and Abhishek who brought me here. Thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity to be with you. I'm afraid I'm here under rather false pretenses because I was just wondering, 100 years ago, if you had asked somebody who was born towards the second half of the 19th century and who'd grown up in the 70s and 80s, in the era of bullock carts and horse-drawn carriages, to come in the year 1916 and talk about motor cars, it would have been an anomaly. I think that anomaly persists in my case because I was born and brought up in the last century, and the phenomena that we are discussing today only took wing in the last 10 years or so. So I cannot ever pose as an expert on social media. I have grown up with the traditional media, and I have made a part career out of one of the traditional media, which is television, which was new to generations before me, but which was very much my home territory. And now, the social media is your home territory, it's not mine. So let's be very clear, I have much more to learn from you on social media than I can possibly impart to you. So I won't pretend to. I can only comment on a little bit of what I have seen that has evolved and the tremendous changes that are taking place, and make a few very, very obvious predictions. What I have seen is that there has been reluctance to adopt it, particularly in government sectors where I have worked. Government has been a very late adopter of social media, and it suffered as a consequence. Now it is gearing up, and I have been associated peripherally with the first efforts with the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting to set up a social media wing, what was called at that time the new media wing. So I know how they had to struggle to come to terms with social media, how to evolve policies, the various snafus that took place in the initial years and continue to take place from time to time, and the kind of wariness that bureaucrats had about the whole phenomenon of social media. That wariness, I think, to a certain extent, the bureaucratic level still persists, but at the political level, fortunately, it's going away because of the main driving force of our Prime Minister, who is a very, very active, keen user of all communication platforms, from interpersonal all the way up to social media. So, and he's quite adept and expert at doing so. So that is changing. The only prediction I would like to make is that by the time you get to be about my age, you will be outdated as well. Don't worry. The change is happening so fast and so furiously that you will be in precisely my shoes when you're my age. And there will be, what will come is very difficult to predict at the moment, because 15 years ago, nobody could have predicted what is happening. And it is impacting every single aspect of life. And the only other thing I can say is that it is going to, the pace of change in this country at least is going to increase exponentially because of the expansion of our broadband network, which is taking place, slower than it should, but it is taking place, and because of the expansion of 4G LTE. Within 2 or 3 years, we will all be outdated. We have to relearn everything. So I hesitate to make any observations other than this, to say that all of us will have to continue to adapt and find new ways to deal with the world through social media. For instance, the broadcast sector already faces a certain kind of doom because appointment viewing is going to disappear. I'm sure other people will tell you much more about it. People increasingly only view when they want to, on demand, or they stream, or they download. Downloading will also slowly disappear. And this is all that one can say at the moment. Television will be reserved for major events like, the Super Bowl that happened in the United States, or major football tournaments, or the Oscar nights, or something like that. Nobody will actually sit down and watch in front of the television set in a few years from now. But it will persist. The other lesson that I have to share, which I have learned, is that no media dies. All media always persist and subsist. They adapt, they change, but they persist. There is a persistence of all media. Even in the age of social media, traditional media have not died. They have adapted. They may have thinned out. The following may have been reduced, but they persist. Not only the traditional media, even folk media, traditional media in that sense, centuries old, also persist. So everything persists, nothing dies, but everything changes as well. And that's all I have to say on social media and organizations, because each organization will have to adapt its own technology. Sonia is far more of an expert in this field, and she will give you far deeper insight than I could possibly pretend to. But I will be very happy to take any questions that might be directed at somebody who's a novice in the field. If there are no questions, we can move on to the speakers who will speak more substantively. Prahlad and Sonia.
I have a question.
Yes. It's going to be a googly for me, I'm sure.
The observation that you made, government has been very reluctant and slow learner as far as new technologies are concerned, is a double-handed sword actually. In one way, it's a huge boon because it allows young people to do startups and set up things which are international in their nature with no influence or interference from government because we know jack about it.
Good.
Okay, now I believe that the IT industry in this country is as successful as it is because the government ignored the evidence. So basically, our government is known to have very sticky fingers and put its hand in the cookie jar. And I think the IT industry had a 10-year honeymoon period where they managed to develop by themselves, where nobody in government could understand that a small floppy or a hard disk could carry $1 million worth of information on it. And they could just cross borders and customs with impunity without anybody's sticky fingers getting into it. Can you give me a comment on that?
Certainly, because I've seen this IT boom coming up before my eyes, and I know that there was tremendous encouragement from certain sectors of the government for it. And in fact, it had to be pushed at a certain level, but not regulated. You're absolutely right, because it was not understood. It was pushed. I remember when computers first came in, we were early adopters of computers. And we're talking now of the mid-80s.
That's right.
Yes. So there was tremendous enthusiasm at the top for introducing IT. But there was lack of control anywhere below that, or any information even how to deal with it. So I have dealt with the initial computerization of my office. I dealt with one of the first fax machines that came into any government office, apart from the Prime Minister's office, possibly, because I was dealing internationally with international film festivals. And I said, look, you're operating on telex, but everybody's shifted to faxes, so I have to have a fax machine. He said, what is a fax machine? So what has been through all this, and I got my fax machine. And we shifted to fax, and then I started slowly, by the time I was in that particular job, and the emails had started happening, and the fax was on its way out. So I've seen all these transitions happening, and I can predict that these transitions are going to keep on happening at a faster pace now. And you will face them all. You will have to be ready to keep taking up these challenges. Government has finally woken up to social media now, again, a bit late in the day, but they still don't know how to regulate it very well.
No, I hope they don't.
So, as a result, we have a window of freedom, so to speak, for some time. But they are getting savvy. They are finding out how to block certain aspects, how to regulate, how to even direct traffic in certain ways. They are learning. So the holiday is not going to be too long, I think. And it will depend on public pressure as to how much freedom remains.
I think the technology is going to change faster than the government might say.
It always does.
So when it comes to criticism of the government, they realize it's almost instant on social media, especially when it comes to facts on corruption and scams. So they're very scared of that.
We've already seen that, and it's affecting organizations so basically now. Let me tell you what news organizations, for instance. There was a time when news was obtained by either through the wire agencies or through reporters of the field.
Or Reuters.
Or wire agencies, Reuters, ANI, whatever, PTI and so on. Now, the main source of news for all newspapers is Twitter.
Yes.
Right.
And it's different.
And this has happened in the last 3 years. So, it's a huge change. Now what happens is, things which were often very local, controversies which happened only in a little enclave somewhere and then died out quietly, are now not only nationwide but international. And they are kept alive by the fact that it's reactive. So it's a two-way process now. So that keeps issues alive far longer. And the result is there has been a bit of a trivialization of news as well. That's one of the concomitants, because you get caught up in issues which should have died a long time ago, which are not that important. And those issues seem to sort of supersede more important issues because they're kept alive because the conversations keep buzzing around it. So, I mean, I'll give you a small instance if I may. It's political. Nobody's recording this, I hope. They're recording it, I'm not giving it. No, it's being recorded, so I'm not giving it. But for instance, I'll generalize it a bit. If there's a small issue in a college or in an institution such as this, between faculty and students, or between the administration and students, or something like that, or between two sets of students, now you see it going completely national. In earlier times, 15 years ago, it would have remained local, it would have died out. Now it's all national, and suddenly all, what to say, speak about other organizations, educational institutions are under tremendous pressure.
Yes.
Yes.
So the dynamics have changed enormously, and they will continue to change. And I would hate to hazard any guesses as to what direction we'll go.
Are you referring to the Hyderabad incident?
Amongst others. Absolutely.
But Sunit, I have a question picking up from here, and this question is to all the panelists. I'd be grateful if you comment on this. That while
You have to start with
hello, yeah. Even I can raise my voice, there's no problem. What I'm saying is that while the flip side of while the flip side of social media, we have all lapped it up, but we have not talked about the flop side. And one of the flop sides that comes to my mind is the net brain disorder, which I call it the overuse of net, whichever way. With the result, the latest study in the United Kingdom has said that 4% of the adult population today in UK is already suffering from disorder, which brings in narcissism, distraction, and also the fear of missing out. Now, what's your comment on this? And this question remains to entire
I tend to have a very philosophical perspective. My perspective is essentially that every new technology brings with it certain, many very large benefits and certain distractions or certain negative effects. And that has happened with every technology we've had, whether it's, print had its own problems when newspapers started up in the 18th century. We have problems with radio when it came up, television. If you remember the debates way back in the 80s when television sort of exploded in India, there was a huge amount of debate about television addiction and so on and so forth, and people being misled, misguided, and so on and so forth. Now that debate is there, virtually. And now the new technology always comes and people always see, some people tend to make it into a bugbear. But every technology will bring with it certain negative aspects as well, and it's bound to happen. People adjust over time, and some of those negative aspects will persist. But for heaven's sake, you can't get rid of technology because of that. You have to deal with it somehow or other.
That's why the poet has said, "Naam khodoge to kidhar jaoge, pehchan khodoge to bikhar jaoge."
So these days, everybody, the pehchan is changing faster than the naam.
That's right.
I think in the interest of time, we will just take one question at the moment, and then towards the end we can take the question. Yeah, please.
Good morning, sir.
Sorry?
Actually, you answered one of my questions on the rise, but at the same time, the traditional media are also now dying. Would I be correct in saying that the other media are using social media as a platform to keep themselves alive? Because
See, the interrelationship between media is inextricable and always has been. Any new medium I'm giving you analogies and parallels. When television arose, people said in India television depends entirely on cinema, which is an older technology, right? In the Indian context. Because they said without cinema, television is dead because most of their programming is cinema-centric or is extracted from cinema. So, all media are interrelated, interlinked. There's nothing that separates them. These are just media. Please remember, communication is a human phenomenon. The need to communicate is the basis of society. Without that, you don't have society. And all media are merely media. What is the meaning of media? It's just a medium. It's just a method to use to communicate. Now, you can't regulate human communication. You've never been able to do, even when you had no technology, when you had speech developed. Why? For the need to communicate. You couldn't stop speech beyond a point. You can't control it beyond a point. Similarly, once you have the print was the first medium, which was a mass medium. From one point you could address hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands. Then you had radio, where people will actually hear things, they will hear them live even. So the speed collapsed. Range increases, speed collapses. What is different about social media is that it's different from the mass media of earlier times. It is a mass medium, but it's also an interactive medium. Now that is the fundamental difference between social media and the earlier mass media. And that, we see the upheavals that we are seeing in all sectors, all organizations, all across society itself, because of the nature of this new medium. And that will continue. And interactivity will always increase. Is the key? Absolutely. Because human interaction is the key to society. So never forget that. It's never going to be easy to regulate, or it cannot be regulated. It will go on increasing. It will increase, exponentially, frankly. So we have to be ready for a completely different way of organization, of society, of everything that we treasure as our civilizations. So all of it is going to change. And change is the only constant, as we all know.
I have a question. I can see a question from Amit. I can't say no to him.
So, you have been closely associated with IIMC, which is one of the most premier institutes in terms of communication. Now, my question is that are we able to adapt to the fast changing world in terms of our curriculum also for education? Let's say TV. If I am not associated with TV, if I don't know about how it works, I am okay. But social media, it is in everybody's life. So isn't education important about how to deal with it? One of the problems that Colonel Adwal was suggesting about problems with addiction. Yes. Because TV is limited to some people probably. But mass media is really mass. It is affecting everybody. So don't we think that our education system, our educational institutes, the premium institutes should have the adaptability to bring on the curriculum which also teaches people how to deal with that or how to deal with that fast change?
I have just two observations to make on this. One is what makes you think they are not. They are trying to do that. But obviously, the rate of change of technology is much faster than the rate at which you can adapt and change curricula. So that will persist. And that's true for all fields. You know, cutting edge is only in research. The difference with the social media is that it is out there in your face even before you can change. The changes in the social media are out there in your face even before you can change curricula, because if you have a 2-year course or a 3-year course, it takes a certain amount of time before you can change it. Technology is changing even faster than that. It's not that people aren't changing it. We've been doing it in my institute also with constant yearly reviews, but you can only review once a year. Innovations come out 15 times a year. So you can't really keep pace in that sense. But broadly, you do keep pace. Number two, as with every new technology, particularly the technology which is adopted by masses of people, most of the learning comes hands-on of people who use it.
Exactly.
And that is why I say they can teach me more about social media than I can, because I'm less hands-on with social media than they are.
Because
And the cutting edge is there, not here.
you can't formalize it.
No, you can't formalize it.
Different people learn it at different speeds
Yes.
according to their own ability.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the kinds of changes that are taking place when they interact with each other are unimaginable. I wouldn't want to imagine something.
The only thing I see, in India is that when a political system tries to regulate social media, we drive it underground and we completely take it.
Then it becomes dangerous. Absolutely right. And it's true for all media, frankly. When you try to regulate it too much, it goes underground and it becomes more dangerous. We already have a dark net. The dark web. Beware of the dark web. Alright, I think I've said enough. Thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. Thank you. Thank you.